But this one is going to come out on Wednesday, I believe. It's for Mint Press News, and it's about reverse drug stings, which I've talked about in the past, and I've done even a short podcast video before on these. And I'm not sure what the article is going to be called just yet. Who knows? But if you're watching it, you can see on my screen, and you see I have two titles. The latest tool for creating criminals in the war on drugs, or another tool for creating victims of the war on drugs. Either way, it's all the same. And this article goes into very specific examples of places that we have seen the government and local and federal agencies increasingly create crimes, whether it's accusing people of terrorism or drug and weapons crimes. And also we've seen an increase in the militarization of the police. So I'm looking at these two instances and recognizing that, yes, we are living in a police state. The police are creating crimes and then framing people for them, essentially entrapping them, but really walking that thin line where it can't technically be called entrapment and where judges' hands are tied. And one of the ways that they're doing this involves the reverse stings. And this is specifically the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, otherwise known as the ATF. That horrible, horrible agency. So over the last decade or so, the ATF has been making use of the reverse stings, which essentially involves them sending in confidential informants. So somebody on your block gets arrested for drugs. The cop's like, dude, if you want to avoid big jail time, you better give us a few people. So, go to your friends and set up this operation. So what they do is they send in the person, the informant now, to talk to their friends and say, hey, I know this other guy, he sells drugs, or he delivers drugs for people, but he's really disgruntled, he's upset, he said they're not paying him enough, and he knows how to, where they hide their drugs, he'll help us rob it from them. All we need to do is get, a couple of guns and a crew of people, and we can rob, and they make up some ridiculous amount of drugs. And then the confidential informant, the friend who was arrested, introduces the courier, the drug deliverer, aka an undercover ATF agent, to his friends and says, guys, check out this cool dude. And the guy gives them their bullshit story about how they can come rob a house and it'll be really easy. They just got to bring some guns and there's going to be, 40 plus kilos of cocaine and all these weapons and all this money, etc., etc. And they make the whole thing up. The house doesn't exist, the drugs don't exist, the money doesn't exist, and the weapons don't exist. So what they do is they go into poor neighborhoods and this is the words of one judge, they troll poor neighborhoods for people who are either already predisposed to crime or people who, when you're in a situation where you're trying to just survive and somebody offers you a shitload of money to do something that might sound a little bit outrageous, you might go for it. You know what I mean? Like, you might actually go for it, even if you thought it was a stupid idea, because you don't really have a lot of options. But this is what the government's doing. Instead of actually going out and catching real criminals instead of being criminals, and even if you think that they should be out there catching people for like cocaine or really violent criminals, right? Let's assume that they do that and that's legitimate. They're not even doing that. They're just taking people off the street. They're not taking any more drugs off the street because the drugs weren't real. They're not taking any more weapons off because the weapons weren't real. They made the whole thing up. And even more ridiculous is then when they try these people, since the drugs were made up, they get to come up with some arbitrary number just pulled out of their ass and then send people to prison based on these things. So in my article, I cover all those details I just went through, and I cover some cases that the judges have been pushing back. And I give a specific example with somebody that I was lucky enough to interview, Melvin Taylor of reversestings.org. It's an organization, a website that he founded with another prisoner who's incarcerated, and his name is Danny D. Block. And Melvin Taylor was arrested in 2006. Yeah, 2006. Just May 2006. For his supposed involvement in one of these reverse stings. And I tell the story that I called from freedom to prison in less than 24 hours. He was going to visit a friend who didn't realize that one of his other friends had been caught and was turned into an informant and was working with the ATF to try to entrap him. Melvin Taylor's friend was Marlon Barnes, and this supposed friend of his, this snitch of his, kept trying to get him involved in some crazy scheme to rob this house, and they told him all this crazy stuff. He never clearly ever said he wanted to do it. Melvin just happened to come by the hotel and was there, and the thing just played out like it is. The next day they come and arrest him after they all talk about it. And Melvin, in the recordings show this, he never explicitly said, okay, we're down, let's do this. They even expressed skepticism, but as usual, these kind of things don't get played in the court. The jury doesn't hear the full story. And he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Marlon was sentenced to 30 years. And they're one of hundreds of people who are being set up like this. People who Melvin was working, he was going to school, and so was Marlon. They were both working and had never been arrested. They weren't violent criminals, so you can't even make that excuse in this specific case. I mean, it's fucked up. And when I talk to him, I feel like, okay, I'll write an article, I'll see if I can do something for you, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna do whatever I can, but this is pretty fucked, dude. And I don't know, I hope that this article will expose that to more people. And if you know people who have been personally affected by this, please contact reversesting.org or contact me. And I'm really just trying to do my part to get the word out on this, because this is just like with the terrorism shit, where they supply everything, the means and all that, to the people, the weapons, whatever it is, and get them to talk or say some crazy thing, and then they arrest them. And even now, the good thing though is that certain judges are now starting to push back on reverse stings and saying like, hey, these people weren't even going to commit crimes, and they wouldn't have committed crimes or even discussed committing crimes if it wasn't up to the government coming in there with their informants. So hopefully we'll see some more pushback, and these people will get freed from prison in the long run, and maybe get paid some money. You can never get your life back, but maybe they can get paid off and live a better life while they're out, after they do get out. And yeah, look out for that. That'll be on mintpressnews.com.